W. Bush. In a new op-ed in the Washington Post, Michael Gerson writes, quote, "It is increasingly evident that the nightmare prospect of American politics, unified Republican control of the federal government in the hands of a re-elected, empowered Donald Trump in 2025, is also the likely outcome."
CNN admits that Trump is most likely going to win in 2024, and they're having an absolute and total meltdown. In this video, we're going to take a look at CNN's prediction. We're going to see how they're collapsing into utter hysterics, and stick with me to the very end of this video, where I'll reveal precisely why CNN is so panicked that Trump's second term is right around the corner. So let's dive right in. But first, a quick shout out to our sponsors, Zippy Loans. Zippy Loans offers an expansive network of lenders that provides you with premium access to the personal loans you need. All you got to do is just click on that link below, and you can get up to $15,000 directly deposited into your bank account as soon as the next day. Give them a try by clicking on the link below, or go to getazippyloan.com. That's getazippyloan.com. All right, gang, let me give you a little bit of a backstory here. Just the other day, CNN interviewed one of their regular contributors, a fellow by the name of Michael Gerson, who is a rhino par excellence. Okay, he's a former George W. Bush speechwriter. He's a rabid never-Trumper and a syndicated columnist for the Washington Post. He's a bona fide member of the permanent political class. Well, he shocked his fellow leftist activists over at CNN by writing a piece entitled "The Trump Nightmare Looms Again." It's an absolutely hilarious piece that takes hysterics to a new height, painting this utterly apocalyptic vision that does most certainly admit that Trump is the most likely winner of the next 2024 presidential election. CNN had him on, and here's what he had to say.
W. Bush. In a new op-ed in the Washington Post, Michael Gerson writes, quote, "It is increasingly evident that the nightmare prospect of American politics, unified Republican control of the federal government in the hands of a re-elected, empowered Donald Trump in 2025, is also the likely outcome." Michael Gerson joins me now. Michael, this piece you wrote, I think, does a few things. Number one, you say it's coming, or likely coming, a Donald Trump victory. And number two, you get into the implications. I want to take the first part first, very quickly. Why do you think it is coming, and maybe even likely, that Donald Trump gets elected?
Well, I'm sorry to ruin people's coffee, but I think we need to recognize the reality here. The first is that all this information is coming out that Donald Trump made a serious, concerted attempt to overturn the 2020 election. So we're gaining information on his lawlessness.
All right, let's stop right there. This, frankly, this just makes my blood boil. First off, what this guy, Michael Gerson, is saying here about Trump's lawlessness is not true. Senate Judiciary Committee Republicans released a report just days back that concluded that President Trump emphatically did not pressure or weaponize either the Department of Justice or the FBI to supposedly overturn the elections. It was clear from the transcripts of his discussions with his advisors that Trump followed their advice and recommendations and refrained from pressuring the Department of Justice to get involved. So what he's saying here is simply not true. But worse than that, this guy, Michael Gerson, that he even has the gall to excoriate President Trump for supposedly trying to overturn the election is nauseating, particularly on CNN. Remember, the Democrats spent 3 years and $30 million trying to overturn the 2016 election. The FBI under the Obama administration actually spied on President Trump, both during his campaign and after he won office, only to find out again after 3 years and a $30 million investigation that there was absolutely no obstruction of justice, no collusion by the Trump campaign with Russia, period. And if you don't know, not only did CNN push the Russian collusion hoax 24/7 for 3 years, but this guy, Michael Gerson, also pushed the whole Russian collusion hoax. He explicitly peddled it as news. Back in November of 2017, he published a piece that accused Trump of covering up his supposed shenanigans with Russia with lie after lie after lie. Even after the Mueller report completely exonerated Trump, he still dug in his heels and doubled down on the whole notion that Trump was in cahoots with Russia. That's who this guy is. I mean, look at some of the headlines this guy spewed out during Trump's presidency. I mean, what a hypocritical joke. Heal thyself, physician. If anyone is guilty in trying to undermine the integrity of a democratic election, it's this guy. So he should be utterly ashamed of himself for even bringing anything like this up. We can already see that this guy is nothing more than a statist propagandist, and a lame one at that. All right, roll the tape.
Second, we're seeing that the Republican Party, rather than revolting against this, is embracing it. He's becoming more popular. And this is creating a kind of feedback loop of radicalization within with the president and his strongest supporters.
All right, his second point here isn't even really worth a response, other than to point out that Republicans are embracing Trump more than ever precisely because he's fighting back against the Democrats' own radicalization. I mean, for heaven's sakes, the Democrats are openly embracing Marxist socialism. Even the Washington Post has printed a piece on this. The only radicalism that we see, we on the MAGA side of the aisle see, is the kind of bizarre nonsense spewed out from Maxine Waters and Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar and the multi-trillion-dollar debacle that Biden and Pelosi are trying and failing to pass. All right, keep going.
And we also have to recognize that the political trends, the normal political trends, are going in the short and medium term in Republican direction. This is not just because of bad Democratic messaging. It's because of the coalitions that they have in a presidential election. We're increasingly polarized by education, and that gives Republicans significant advantages on our map the way it's done. So I don't consider this alarmism. I consider this just description of where we are right now.
All right, he finally gets here to the core of his argument. And if you're regular to this channel, his argument is nothing new. You already know this. The polarization between college-graduated cosmopolitans and non-college exurbans or rural folk is increasingly becoming partisanized. You'll definitely want to check out our latest documentary. I'll link it down in the pinned comments section so you can watch it after this. How Rednecks Are Saving Civilization for development of this. College appears to be the #1 reason why people become leftist liberals. But the problem is that there are far more non-college educated voters. And so as the college graduates become Democrats and the non-college voter becomes more Republican, it's getting harder and harder for Democrats to compete. So that's what he's talking about in this article and here on this video.
As for what it means, you write, many of the professionals and patriots who opposed him, Trump, in his final days, would have been weeded out long before he was reelected. There's no reason Trump would not try to solidify personal power over military and federal law enforcement units to employ as a bullies club in times of civil disorder. There's no reason he would refrain from using federal resources to harass political opponents, undermine freedom of the press, and change the outcome of the elections. You're basically suggesting he would use near dictatorial powers.
Now that list sounded strangely like bumbling Biden's administration, didn't it? Let's take that one by one. If reelected, Trump would supposedly weed out all of these patriots who oppose him. What did Biden do? He expelled nearly 20 Trump appointees from the Military Academy Board. This guy thinks Trump is going to solidify personal power over military and federal law enforcement. Well, it sounds eerily familiar to the way Biden is investigating military and law enforcement for MAGA-loving radicals and insurrectionists, right? And then Trump is supposedly going to use all of this as a bully club in times of civil disorder, like Biden is doing, threatening to unleash federal agents on angry parents at school board meetings. I mean, these guys at CNN are such clowns. Let's keep going.
Yes, I mean, there would be limitations that he would face in the judiciary and other places. But we've seen that he wants to concentrate and centralize federal power to serve his interests and undermine his opponents. I mean, that is what we're seeing from the historical record of his first term. I think he would have significantly fewer obstacles in his second term. You look at what happened in the Justice Department before the 2020 election. I think the president didn't succeed just because a few honorable people stood up. But the reality here is that we have the Republican frontrunner for the 2024 election, would have broken American democracy if he could have broken American democracy. And I think we need to take that very seriously.
He would have if he could have. Ah, I see. In other words, he didn't. He didn't destroy democracy, but he would have if he could have. His entire argument for why Trump is supposedly so bad is rooted in a subjunctive hypothetical. And this guy is considered an upstanding member of the credentialed class.
You say this is not alarmism. You say it's being descriptive. Do you think people get it? Or which people or institutions now do you think need to get a better grasp on this?
Well, the first one is just the Democratic Party. I mean, you look at these trends, which I talk about in the piece, and they're going to need to win in places where they're not currently winning. And that means that they're, the median voter that they're seeking is actually to their right. But right now, all of the national messaging of the Democratic Party is on a $3.5 trillion plan, which is defined by that number rather than anything that would be done. I think that they are focused on internal battles within the Democratic Party. They need to be more focused on this external threat and the reality of who they need to reach.
Yeah, in other words, the Democrats are doomed. Okay, they're doomed because the constituency they need to reach out to is to their right, and Democrats as a party are moving more and more to the left. This guy Gerson is not the only one who's recognized this. A fellow liberal by the name of Kevin Drum, he's a former staffer for the Washington Monthly, he said the same thing. Quote, despite endless hopeful invocations of, but polls show that people like our positions, the truth is that the Democratic Party has been pulled far enough left that even lots of non-crazy people find this just plain scary. Something that Fox News takes vigorous advantage of. From an electoral point of view, the story here is consistent. Democrats have stoked the culture wars by getting more extreme on social issues, and Republicans have used this to successfully cleave away a segment of both the non-college white vote and, more recently, the non-college non-white vote. The American electorate is becoming politically divided between college graduates and non-college graduates. And the split between the two is about a 70-30 in favor of the non-college graduate. Trump, more than any other political figure, has redefined the political party as the party of the rural, non-college graduated voter. And if, as it turns out, he's tapped into a massive voting bloc that has the potential of redefining politics for the foreseeable future. And the fact that CNN is now finally realizing that and panicking makes it even sweeter. So what do you think? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure to watch my latest video on how rednecks are saving civilization. You're going to absolutely love it. Can't wait to see you over there. God bless.